Are you an introvert or are you an extrovert? I'm sure you heard of both of those things if you live in this information-accessible society. For most people, it's an easy choice to determine if they're introverted or if they're extroverted. But for ambiverts, it can be quite difficult to pick between both of those preferences. Popular tests like MBTI or cognitive function theory kind of places people in these boxes of I prioritize being an extrovert or I prioritize being an introvert more. It creates stereotypes like, oh, she's an INFJ, she must not be confident, or she's very quiet and listens all the time. When actually, I know a lot of chatty INFJs. Or she's way too quiet and she always tries to be alone. She's definitely not an extrovert. That's not true. It's never good to blatantly polarize someone as introverted or extroverted. And of course, there are varying degrees. I believe all of you have common sense. I know that you can't fit people into one of these two boxes. It's a very absurd idea. Although the dichotomies give you an overview of underlying motivations and goals and stuff like that, it can sometimes be misleading. It can sometimes make it difficult to understand what type you are. ENFPs are super social, things like that aren't always the case. I'm pretty sure you know a somewhat introvert who likes to spend time with their friends a lot, or a somewhat extrovert who possesses a frequent need for alone time. I'm sure you know that everything has its nuances, especially when it comes to behavior. Character traits exist, like many other things, on a vast continuum, a spectrum of sorts where, depending on how you were raised or the environment you are in now, it changes slightly. For some people, they primarily are introverted or they primarily are extroverted. Today, I just want to explore those people who are primarily ambiverted. The vast majority of us, we want to spend time with people, or we also want to equally balance it out with solitude. We want to learn things with other people or learn things by ourselves. It's a natural thing. I'm suggesting that there are a select amount of people who constantly ricochet between their internal and external worlds in both thought or feeling or observations. In a system like the Big Five, for instance, people who typically are this way have the proclivity to scoring around 50% or the middle mark in a scale from 1 to 100. I am personally someone who scores somewhere in the middle. Those people who can relate to this are called ambiverts. Ambiverts, it's an easy definition. Ambi meaning both and verts version. Before I continue with this video and our exploration of what an ambivert is, I kind of want to put a disclaimer in a way, and it's sad, but a lot of the times when I watch videos on personality typology, and not like the specifics where you learn, but just explaining why we are this way, like for instance, what you don't get about introverts or a day in the life of an introvert, I sort of feel like people want to make it more special than it is, themselves or the group that they identify with more special. And it got me annoyed at first, but I find that as I delve deeper into understanding personality typology, I become more aware of myself and emotionally intelligent in my interpersonal relationships, which is extremely helpful in the long run. I start to realize how greatly people's personality types shape society. It's an obvious thing, but a not so obvious thing. It's really fascinating. It shows you your root motivations, the underlying causes as to why you behave the way you do. It helped me embrace my qualities, my strengths, as well as the shadows of those qualities that we often like to call flaws or deficiencies. Growing up, I kind of struggled with how to behave. The external world was way too loud for me, and it kind of was draining to be in the spotlight all the time. It was also very draining if I was in my internal world. It was way too quiet. There was not enough stimulation for me to explore and have new ideas and just feel alive. I was constantly trying to seek equivalence in both these dichotomies. Ambiverts typically want to balance where they put their energy. If I'm going to be honest, ambiversion is a very common thing. A very common thing. Many people that you can walk up to can say, oh yeah, I want to be by myself a lot, but I also want to be with other people. Walking down the street, you're more likely to run into someone who doesn't even look at you or say hello or smile at you. But if you stop them and say, "Hi, how are you?" they won't be that uncomfortable. They'll just reciprocate it. That's why extroverts are seen as special and introverts as rare pearls. Okay, I was kidding there. Don't come at my throat. Balance is a feeling derived from being whole and complete. It is feeling harmonious with yourself and others. It is essential to having the life you want, a life where you can thrive. Throughout a typical day as an ambivert, I'm instinctively aware of how to delegate my energy. From spending time with family to group projects or working alone to entertainment with friends, there's always a need to keep things in moderation. Whether it is conversation or quietness, engagement or analyzation, everything is kept equally almost to fulfill the goal of balance. They are sick that serve fate with too much, as they that starve with nothing. It's very important to know what you need best for yourself as well as what other people need. And this is one of the best qualities ambiverts have. They can distinguish between, oh, I need to give my time for myself, but I also need to give time for other people. Because their personality doesn't depend on being so absorbed in their internal world, which isn't a bad thing, or so focused on other people, which isn't a bad thing either, it's easier for them to get along with a majority of different people, both extroverts, introverts, ambiverts. When they're with introverts who are more on the somewhat listener side, or they don't like to initiate, the ambivert will fill in that gap. They'll initiate, they'll talk, they'll stimulate the introvert so there can be a conversation going. Or if there's an extrovert who tends to be more chatty or, gregarious, they're gonna lower down the volume of their own gregariousness and adjust. There was once a time in my life where I was constantly at home by myself in solitude, and I liked it at first, but then I would go to work and then I would be in more solitude, and it was just so overbearing because I didn't have new stimulation to feed my mind. It was just so boring. It was hard to be happy. But then there was also a time in my life where I was at school in the cafeteria. It was just so loud and so much noise, so much stimulation. It was very difficult to feel energized because just so much was going on. It made me very, very unhappy. It made me anxious and moody, and I was constantly trying to run away from people. After school, when my family was trying to connect with me, I was drained already. I didn't have any energy left. That's why it's important to know what fuels your mind so you can set up your life the way you want. So you can create boundaries for the stimulation or the lack of stimulation you encounter throughout the day. Also, like this video if you enjoyed it, and subscribe if you haven't. Comment down below if you didn't like this video, if you thought something was terrible. Hit the thumbs down button because I really respect criticism and I want to know if anything could be better. I want to continue this conversation of what ambiversion is and how important it is to understand who you are and who others are. Thank you for watching this video. I have other social media down in the description. Shoot me a direct message or a question or whatever you want. Just don't be weird because, like I always say, I will block you. Thank you for watching. Bye!